Be me. Drew, 29, freelance videographer, commercial work mostly, product videos, branded content, some corporate stuff on the side. Got into it seriously around 22 and never really looked back. A few of my friends went into finance, IT, all the safe career paths. Not my thing. I shoot things. I cut them together. I make them look like something. That's the job description in its entirety. Got my own apartment at 26. One bedroom turned into a proper edit suite. 2 monitors, a decent audio setup, hard drives stacked in a way that would give a fire marshal a headache. No roommates, just me and a library of footage going back 6 years. I like the quiet. Easier to work, easier to think, easier to just exist without managing anyone else's presence. Income is not flashy, but it's consistent. Word of mouth has been decent. I'm reliable. I don't miss deadlines. Clients come back and tell other clients. That's basically the whole business model. Life was fine before all of this. Quiet, functional, nothing to complain about. And then Sloane. Met her through a friend of a friend at some kind of low-key gathering. She was an architect, standing with a group near the window explaining why the room layout was inefficient. Something about the sight lines and the bar placement creating a bottleneck during peak traffic. She had strong opinions about the ceiling height, too. I walked over and asked what she'd do differently with the space. She took that seriously. Started actually explaining it. I asked follow-up questions, not pretending to know things I don't know, just genuinely following the logic. She told me later she'd expected me to nod along and lose interest after 90 seconds. Most people did, apparently. We talked for most of that evening. She was sharp in the specific way where she had real positions on things. Not performance, actual positions. I like that in a person. We swapped numbers, started seeing each other a few weeks after that. First couple of months were easy in all the right ways. She'd come over after work, I'd cook, we'd eat. She'd talk about whatever project she was in the middle of. I don't know architecture from the inside, but I can follow the logic of a design problem. She'd walk me through decisions she was wrestling with, the constraints, the competing priorities. I'd ask questions that were probably obvious from her side, but helped her think out loud. She mentioned once that most people's eyes glazed over when she got into the actual details of her work. Said she'd learned to keep it surface level to spare people the effort of pretending. Said it was strange to actually be able to talk about it for real. I liked that. Felt like I was genuinely useful to her in a real way. Not just present, useful. Somewhere around month 4, the easy feeling started having friction in it. I can't pinpoint the exact date or even the week, just that the temperature started dropping 1 degree at a time. She'd come home, and the decompression would take longer. I'd ask about her day, and get the headline version with no detail underneath it. And then the comparisons started. Nothing aggressive, never a direct demand, always framed as observations. A colleague's boyfriend had apparently driven several hours to surprise her at a work event. A friend's partner had planned something elaborate for an anniversary. Her co-worker had gotten flowers at the office out of nowhere on a random day, always delivered in this tone that was technically neutral but wasn't really neutral at all, always ending with some variation of, "Isn't that nice?" I'd acknowledge it and move on. Said, "It sounds nice." Yeah. But it kept coming. New examples, new things other people's partners were apparently doing. I asked her directly at some point if there was something specific she wanted. She said no, she was just sharing things she'd noticed. I took that at face value for a while. And there was this other thing. This word that started coming up a lot. Toxic. Always in connection with men doing something she didn't like. A colleague who hadn't credited her work properly was displaying toxic behavior. A client who pushed back on her design decisions was being toxic. She'd share things from her feed about toxic masculinity, and we'd have these conversations. I'm not going to sit here and say that word has no meaning at all, ever. but it started being the default frame for anything male-shaped that caused friction, and I noticed at some point that I was scanning my own words before I said them. Doing this quick internal check, is this going to land as toxic somehow? Is this going to come back as me being part of the problem? That's a strange way to be with someone you're actually with. You shouldn't be running your own sentences through a filter before you speak them. There was one night she came home, and something had happened at work. A colleague had presented a project she'd partly contributed to and hadn't credited her. Fair thing to be frustrated about. I said so. We talked about it for a while. I validated the frustration fully. Then she mentioned, in the same breath, that this same colleague's husband had brought her lunch to the office that day, which was a completely separate thing, but it got folded into the same conversation, like it belonged there. And I felt it, the way one thing became about another thing. I didn't say anything, just kept listening. Another time we were at some kind of dinner thing with her work people, mostly her colleagues, one or two partners, me on the outside of all the industry talk. I did what I usually do, asked people questions, followed what they were saying, stayed engaged. On the walk back, she was quiet. I asked if everything was good. She said yeah. Then, a few minutes later, said something about how her colleague's partner had known all the right things to say at dinner, had made everyone laugh, held the room, that her colleague looked proud. I asked if she hadn't had a good time. She said it was fine. The word fine doing a lot of work there. I said nothing, went home, thought about it on the couch for a bit, decided I couldn't optimize for a standard I couldn't see. I kept that observation to myself and kept showing up the same way, because that's what you do when you're in it. You don't stop showing up because the thermometer dropped a few degrees. You just keep going and wait for it to level out. Which it didn't, but I kept waiting anyway. Her birthday was coming up. I spent time actually thinking about what to do. Video is my skill set. It's how I think. It made sense to go there. I went through photos she'd sent me over the months, found footage on my phone from different places we'd been together. A morning at a market we'd gone to, some clips from a drive, a few seconds of her talking at dinner that I'd half-accidentally shot. Pulled it all together. Actual editing, real decisions about structure and pacing and music, not a slideshow with crossfades and a pop song. I worked on it in the evenings across probably 2.5 weeks, fitting it around client work, the kind of attention I'd put into a paid project. Maybe more because I actually cared about this one. Her birthday came. We went out, had dinner. The evening was good on the surface. At some point, I gave her my phone with the video queued up. She watched the whole thing. I was watching her face while she watched. She finished, looked up at me, said it was cute, handed the phone back, asked what I wanted for dessert. I put the phone in my pocket, said something about the menu. We ordered dessert. I sat there with a specific feeling that I didn't have a name for immediately. Not devastation, not anger. More like standing in a room and noticing that no one else can see the furniture. The evening continued. I told myself what you tell yourself. That she wasn't demonstrative. That she felt it, but expressed things differently. That not everyone gets emotional about a video. That I was being unreasonable about wanting a bigger reaction. I believed most of that for a few weeks. The thing about that kind of self-talk is you can only keep buying it for so long, before something in you quietly stops. Weeks after her birthday didn't change much, still doing the same things, picking her up when she had brutal days at the office, staying available when she needed someone to talk at. There was one evening she had a major client presentation the next morning. Her visual materials weren't landing right. The second half of the deck had no coherent build. She was stressed in the specific way where stressed and anxious have merged into one thing. I sat with her from 9 in the evening until past 1 in the morning going through it. I don't know architecture, but I know when a slide has too much on it. When the flow loses its logic and the audience stops following. We restructured the whole second half. She went to bed calmer. I cleaned up the papers from the table and went to sleep. She texted the next afternoon that the presentation had gone well. That was the message. Not a call, a text. Presentation went well, that's it. I told myself that was fine. People process differently. That she appreciated it internally. Maybe I was holding a weird standard for how gratitude was supposed to look. And I ran that loop enough times that I'm genuinely not sure anymore what was reasonable. What I do know is that having to run the loop at all was information. Things that are working don't usually require that much internal justification. The texture of things kept getting flatter. She was on her phone more when we were together. I'd try to say something, and there'd be that half second where she'd look up from the screen. I started shortening what I said, not on purpose at first, just gradually editing the stories down before they left my mouth, giving her the summary instead of the full version. Because the full version wasn't landing anyway, why give someone the long cut when they're only watching the trailer? There was one specific night. I'm cooking. She comes in from work, drops her stuff at the door, sits down at the counter, opens her phone immediately. I put a plate in front of her. She doesn't look up. I sit down across from her. We eat. I try once, mention something from a shoot I'd done that day, something that had been genuinely funny. She makes a sound that technically counts as acknowledgement, doesn't look up from the screen. I finish the story anyway. She's reading something. We finish eating mostly in silence. I clear the table. She's still at the counter. I wash the dishes. The sound of water running and plates clinking is the only thing happening in the apartment. I turn the water off, dry my hands. She's still looking at her phone. I sit back down, and I just look at her for a second. Not accusatory, not sad, just actually looking. Trying to figure out if this is just what things are now, or if something specific is wrong tonight. I can't tell. I decide not to ask again because asking hasn't been producing answers. Eventually, she puts the phone face down on the counter, looks at me, says she's been thinking about something, says she needs more. The exact phrasing was something like, she's been feeling like something is missing, that she needs more from this, that I'm a good person, but it isn't enough. I'm still at the table. I ask what more means, what it looks like specifically. She thinks about it. You can actually see her searching for the answer. Nothing comes. She says just more. More in general. More of something she can feel the absence of, but can't point at. I sit there for a second. Ask one more time if there's something concrete she can name. She shakes her head. I nod. Say okay. Get up. Take both plates to the sink. Wash up. She sits at the counter for a bit longer, eventually picks up her bag, says she'll talk to me later. I hear the door. I dry my hands on the dish towel. Look at the counter for a moment. Go sit on the couch, turn the TV on, stare at it. Not really watching anything, just the light and the sound. There was no breakdown, no dramatic moment, just the quiet. The kind of quiet that isn't sad exactly, just is what it is. I went to bed eventually, woke up the next morning, and the first thing I noticed was that I felt okay. Not great, not wrecked, just okay. It was strange, honestly. I'd expected something heavier, the kind of morning where the ceiling looks different and everything has a gray edge. But it was just a regular morning. The light was the same, the apartment was the same. Got up, showered, made coffee, sat with it for a few minutes at the kitchen counter. Thought about calling someone to talk about it. Didn't. Not because I was pretending to be fine, just genuinely didn't have much to say yet. I'd been with someone for over a year, and she'd told me it wasn't enough. And I'd said okay and washed the dishes. That's the whole summary. Then opened my laptop and checked emails. There was an inquiry sitting in my inbox from a tech startup. They had a product launching and needed a series of videos to support it. I replied, We set up a call. Took the job. First meeting happened about a week after that. Went to their office, relatively small place, open floor plan, the usual startup layout. The project manager was named Paige. She ran the meeting. Not loudly, clearly. Had the brief written up, knew what they needed to communicate, but she actually asked for my input. Not as a formality, she genuinely wanted to know how I'd approach the opening sequence. I gave her my honest take, including that part of their original brief had a concept I thought would actively work against them. Explained the reasoning, suggested an alternative approach. She didn't get defensive about the original, didn't go back to the brief to protect it. Said that made sense and asked me to run with my version. Whole thing resolved in under 2 minutes. No ego anywhere in it. We went through the rest of it, set the timeline. I drove home and started prepping. Second meeting happened a few days after, more detailed, going over the shot list line by line. She caught a branding inconsistency in their reference materials, a logo variant that didn't match their current brand standard. Small thing, but it matters for consistency across a video series. I hadn't caught it. I said nice catch. She said that's literally what she was there for and moved on. No production around it. Finds the thing, names it, we fix it. The shoot days happened across a few sessions. She was good on set in the way that actually matters. Decisive when something needed a call, invisible when it didn't. She understood that once you've hired someone for their skill, you let them use it. Not every client gets that. Some clients hover, question every setup, want to be involved in decisions they don't have the background to make. She didn't do any of that. She'd show up, look at the monitor once in a while, trust what she saw. The second shoot day, we ran into a lighting problem. The space they'd booked had a window we hadn't factored in properly. Wrong time of day, wrong angle. The whole setup needed adjusting. I told her what the options were, what each one would cost us in time. She picked one and said, let's go. No hand-wringing, no calls to someone above her, just made the call. We solved it, kept moving. By the end of that day, we were actually ahead of schedule. Last shoot day wrapped in the mid-afternoon. We're walking out, and she mentions needing coffee. I say same. There's a place right there, so we just go. Get a table, order, start talking about the project. Project conversation runs out after maybe 15 minutes, and we just keep going. She asks about other things I've worked on. I tell her about a documentary short I'd shot on my own time about a year before. Personal project, subject that interested me, just went and did it. She asks what the subject was. I explain it. She asks how I found the people involved. I explain that too. Asks how I decided to structure the narrative. Actually following along, actually interested. Not the polite version of interested. I make some comment about color grading being a specific kind of psychological warfare when it's 3 a.m. She laughs properly. The real kind, not the one that means I heard you made a joke. I realized sitting there that I hadn't gotten that laugh from someone in a while. Not in actual conversation anyway. We stay there almost 2 hours. She has to get back for something, glances at her phone. We walk out. I drive home. Somewhere around the 3rd traffic light, I realize I hadn't thought about Sloane once the entire time, not avoiding it. She just hadn't crossed my mind. I sit with that for a bit on the drive. Don't make anything of it yet. Just note it. A few days pass. I see something while researching reference material for a different project. A photographer whose work had a quality she'd mentioned in conversation. I text her the link, say it reminded me of what she was talking about. She replies faster than I expected, adds her own take on it. We go back and forth for 20 minutes or so, nothing effortful about it, just easy. She suggests an exhibition she'd been meaning to check out. I say sure. We figure out a day, go the following week. Gallery space, mix of things. Some of it immediate, some of it requires walking with it for a minute. We wander separately sometimes, find each other at pieces worth stopping at. There's one installation near the back. I look at it for a while. Tell her I think it's trying too hard. She turns and looks at me like I've said something wrong, then makes a whole case for why it works precisely because of the quality I'm criticizing. I push back. She holds her position. I end up saying fine, maybe I'm wrong about the intention, but I'm still not feeling it. She says that's allowed and concedes that the first impression is deliberately difficult. We keep moving. At some point, she takes her phone out and photographs me next to a piece. I wasn't posing, just standing there reading the description on the wall. She shows me the screen, says something like, "You're always on the other side of the camera. It's strange to actually see you in a frame." I look at the photo. It's genuinely a decent shot. I say so. She says obviously, and we keep walking. That was maybe a 2-second exchange. I'm still thinking about it when we leave. Not in a heavy way. Just the casualness of it made it land somewhere. We go out again the following week. And then again. No big conversation about what we're doing or what we are. It just keeps happening because neither of us is making it stop. She comes over for the first time. I cook. Same kind of dinner I've made 100 times. She sits at the counter while I'm working, and we just talk the whole time. She's dealing with something complicated at work. Internal politics around a product she's trying to get pushed through. People above her who don't fully understand the user problem it's meant to solve. She's not just venting. She's thinking out loud, working through it. I follow the logic and ask things where they need asking. We eat. She says the food is seriously good and asks how I did the sauce specifically. I explain what I did. She says she's going to try it and will definitely ruin it. I say I'll write it down so she doesn't have to guess. After we're done, she pulls up something on her phone. A short film, 20 minutes or so. Says she thinks I'll have opinions about it. We watch it on my laptop. She's right. I have opinions. Specifically about the way they handled the third act. The pacing goes soft, right when it should be tightening. I say so. She agrees with half of it, pushes back on the other half. Makes a decent case for why the slower pace in the third act was deliberate, given what the story needed. I partially concede. We talk about it for probably 40 minutes after. She leaves. I close the door. Stand in the kitchen for a second. Realize we'd been here over 4 hours. Didn't feel like 4 hours. A few weeks into this, we take a day trip. Well, she suggests it, and I bring the camera because I always bring the camera. We drive out somewhere without a specific plan. Find a spot, walk around, get food at some small place we've never been to. The kind of place that has 4 tables and a handwritten menu on a board. We're the only people there for a while. The person running it comes out and talks to us for a bit, asks if we're from around here. We say no, just driving. She seems to approve of that for some reason. Brings us extra bread without being asked. I have the camera out here and there, not making a production of it, just when something looks like something. A shot of her looking into a shop window. The light hitting the side of an old building we passed. Her hands around a cup of tea at a place we stopped at late in the afternoon. Nothing staged, just what was actually there. We drive back in the evening with music going. Comfortable stretches of quiet between the conversation. I edit the footage over the next couple of days. Nothing formal, just a short piece. Send it to her when it's done. She watches it and texts back that she watched it twice. Says no one has ever done something like that for her. I read that a few times. I'm not making a big comparison in my head consciously, but I know what it means. I did the same thing before. Same instinct, same care, same hours at the edit bay. Just that this time the person on the other end thought it was worth something. That's the entire difference. Nothing more complicated than that. Weeks keep going. Work is steady. We figure out the practical logistics of 2 busy people. Schedules, whose place on which night, all of it. No scorekeeping, No running tally of who made more effort last time. I'm not walking carefully around anything, not scanning the room before I speak, not trimming stories preemptively because the full version won't land, just moving around normally in my own life with someone in it. That's what it feels like. Normal. Quiet in the good way. Quiet like a room that has nothing wrong in it. There is one evening she comes over and she's brought something. A small plant in a pot. Says her apartment is full of them, and she thought the windowsill here looked bare. Says it as a mild criticism, in the way that's actually affection. I say that's presumptuous. She says I should just try not to kill it. I keep it alive. A few weeks later, it's visibly bigger. We notice at the same time, and she says she's genuinely surprised. I say thanks for the vote of confidence. That's the kind of thing that happens when nothing's wrong. Small, normal things, no weight to them. Some time passes. I'm at home editing one evening, and a message comes in from Sloane. Casual opener, she'd heard I was seeing someone. I reply honestly, yeah, doing well. She writes back pretty quickly, says the timing seems fast to her. I do the mental math. We'd been broken up for a few months by that point. I don't engage with the framing of fast or slow. Just say I'm in a good place. Hope she is too. Another message comes right after. Tone has shifted. She says it seems odd, that she didn't expect me to just move on like that it almost feels like a statement. I read that a couple of times. I honestly don't know what she expected. I don't reply. Sit on it for a day or two. Then she calls. I look at the screen for a second. Pick up. She starts talking. Gets to the point relatively quickly. Says she's heard more details at this point. Knows it's actually something. Says she keeps thinking about it, and something about it bothers her. I let her get to it. She says I'm doing all the same things with Paige that I did with her. The cooking, the attention, the video thing, she'd heard about a video. Says it doesn't seem fair. That if I had been doing all of that with the right energy before, it might have changed things between us. I'm quiet for a second. Then I tell her that I was doing all of that. I did all of it. I mention specifically the birthday video, not an afternoon of work, 2.5 to 3 weeks. She says it was a nice gesture, but she remembers it differently. Says it felt like I was doing the technical version of the thing, but not the emotional version. That there's a difference between producing care and actually having it. I ask what the emotional version looks like. She says it's hard to explain exactly. It's about presence, about whether someone is genuinely giving themselves or just delivering outputs. I tell her I wasn't delivering outputs. I was actually in it. She says the fact that I can't see the difference is probably part of the problem. And then she uses the framework. Says, my way of showing affection has always been transactional. That it's a form of emotional behavior she's read about, something men do without realizing it. That giving someone things, even thoughtful things, can actually be a way of avoiding real vulnerability. That she'd been doing a lot of thinking about the dynamic we had. Says it was one she now recognizes as a pattern of emotional unavailability that's common in men who substitute effort for actual connection. That what looked like care from the outside was really a way of maintaining control over the emotional landscape. That she'd felt this but couldn't name it at the time, and it had taken her a while to find the language for it. I sit with all of that. I'm not going to pretend it didn't land in some uncomfortable way. I've thought about it since, because on one level, I can follow the shape of the argument. On another level, I'm the person who stayed up past 1 a.m. reorganizing her presentation materials, who put 3 weeks into a video that got called cute and set aside, who picked her up from work, who answered every call, who was present every time being present was asked for, and I'm being told that what I thought was genuine was actually a control mechanism I didn't know I was running. I say calmly that I don't think any of it was transactional, that I did those things because I was in it, not because I was managing anything. She says that's exactly what someone who can't see their own patterns would say. That self-awareness isn't the same as actually changing. I stay quiet for a second. Then I say that whatever the framework says, she's the one who ended it. That she sat across from me and said it wasn't enough and couldn't tell me what enough looked like. That I didn't walk away from anything. She says I'm oversimplifying a more nuanced situation. I say maybe. But the part where she told me it wasn't enough is not something I'm misremembering. She says this conversation is making her feel like she's being blamed for everything. I say I'm not blaming anyone. I'm just saying what happened. She says I'm being cold. I say I'm being honest. She hangs up. I put the phone down on the desk. Look at it for a second. Then I open the project I was in the middle of and get back to work. Work for another couple of hours. She doesn't call back. I tell Paige about it when I next see her. Not to make it a whole thing, just because that's what happens when you're with someone. You tell each other things that happened. She asks how I'm feeling about it. I think about that honestly for a second. Say confused more than anything else. Not hurt, not angry. Genuinely puzzled by a version of events I don't fully recognize. She listens, doesn't pile on, doesn't offer a verdict on Sloane. She asks one question, something like, do you think she actually believed what she was saying? I think about that. Say, yeah, I think she did. That's the thing. It wasn't a performance. She'd clearly thought about it, found a framework, organized her experience inside it. It just happens to be a framework that doesn't match the actual events from where I was standing. Paige nods, says something like, that's the harder kind of conversation then. She means harder than if someone was just venting or being unfair for the sake of it. I say yeah. We move on to something else. That's the right way to handle it. I appreciate that she didn't need it to become something bigger than it was. A few weeks pass. A mutual acquaintance of mine and Sloane's puts together a gathering. Not a big thing, maybe 20 people at his apartment. He'd texted me directly, mentioned it was happening, gave the address. I asked Paige if she wants to come along. She says sure. We show up. First half hour is completely normal. Drink, conversation, the low-key party rhythm. I'm talking to someone I know from a project about something I can't even remember now. And at some point, I notice Sloane across the room. Hadn't known she'd be there. We see each other at the same moment. I nod. She nods. Neither of us moves toward the other. I go back to the conversation. Paige is on the other side of the room, talking to someone. Seems fine. I check in with her at some point. She's in a normal conversation. Everything's good. Everything is just normal for a while. I'm standing with a small group now, talking about something, the usual party stuff. I notice Sloane has moved closer. She's nearby, half listening to something near her. The person I'd been talking to gets pulled away by someone else. And Sloane steps into that space. Says, I seem different, lighter somehow. I say I'm doing well. She keeps going. Says something about Paige being in the early phase when everything is still easy and new. That it won't stay like this. I don't argue with that. Just don't respond to it. She keeps talking. Says she's been doing a lot of thinking. But she can see the pattern clearly now. That what I do, the cooking and the attention and the things I make, is a way of making myself feel like a good partner without doing the actual work of being present. That she'd come across the research on this, and it had given her the language she needed. Says it's a specific kind of behavior in men who can't handle genuine emotional intimacy, who use gestures as a substitute for showing up in the ways that actually matter. That it's a form of toxic behavior that's easy to miss because it looks like care. Her voice is getting louder, and I don't think she's clocking it. Conversations nearby have gone quiet. The kind of quiet at a party where something more interesting is happening than whatever people were talking about. She says Paige is going to figure it out the same way she did. That I'm giving Paige everything she deserved. That she was the one who stayed and tried, and I was the one who was never actually there. that it isn't fair. The room is quiet now, properly quiet. I know where Paige is. I look at Sloane. I'm not angry. I'm genuinely not angry. I look at her and I say, quietly enough that only she and the people immediately nearby would catch it, that she's the one who told me it wasn't enough, that she said she needed more and couldn't name what more meant, that I didn't leave. She ended it, that if there was something I was missing, she had every opportunity to tell me what it was, and she couldn't name it then either. She opens her mouth. I don't wait for what comes next. I find Paige in the room. She's been watching, she's calm. I walk over. She doesn't say anything, just moves toward the door. We leave. Door closes behind us. Cold air outside. We walk without talking for a bit. She doesn't demand an immediate debrief or ask me to explain anything. After about a block, she asks if I'm okay. I say yeah. She says okay. We keep walking. Find a place that's still open, get food, sit in the car with the heat on. She puts music on low. We eat. I'm watching the street through the windshield. A couple of people walking past, the usual quiet of a residential area at night. She asks at some point if I want to talk about any of it. I say not, especially. She says fair enough. Doesn't push it. We sit there. I'm turning it over in my head quietly. Not in a spiraling way, just looking at it from a few angles. Trying to be honest with myself about whether there was something true in what Sloane said. The thing about gestures versus presence, about patterns and unavailability, about toxic behavior hiding in things that look like care. I've sat with that framing seriously, and I don't think it's true about me, but I understand how someone arrives at it. When you want something you can't describe, and the other person can't figure out what it is, it's easier to build a theory than to sit with the ambiguity, to name it something clinical, give it a category, locate the failure in a recognizable pattern. Easier than just saying we wanted different things and neither of us could close the gap. The closest honest answer I have is that we were the wrong fit. Not because she was terrible or I was, just that the thing she needed wasn't the thing I was offering, even when neither of us knew what the thing was. And here's the part I keep coming back to. I'm doing the exact same things now. Same cooking, same showing up, same camera, and the footage, and the care in the cut. Nothing new, no hidden gear that I discovered. Just doing what I do. And it's easy. No one's keeping a running comparison to other people's partners. No one's building a theory about what my behavior secretly means. Paige finishes her food, crumples the wrapper, asks if I want to head back to mine or just call it. I say, let's go back. We drive. I make tea when we get in. She finds something to put on. We watch it. She falls asleep somewhere in the second episode. I sit there with the TV going low. Quiet apartment. No pressure anywhere in it. I think about the version of me from about a year ago, cooking in that same kitchen, putting clean plates away after a dinner, mostly in silence, telling myself I was probably overthinking things. He wasn't overthinking. He was just with someone where what he brought wasn't the right shape for what she needed. And that's not a failure on either side. It's just how things are sometimes. You can do everything right and still be the wrong answer for a specific person. That's not a character flaw, it's just math. I turn the TV off. Paige half wakes up. I tell her we can stay here. No need to go anywhere. She makes some sound of agreement and settles back down. I get a blanket from the closet, put it over her, go to bed. I lie there for a bit in the dark, not awake with thoughts exactly, just not immediately asleep. I think about where I was a year ago, cooking in that same kitchen, putting clean plates away after a dinner, mostly in silence, telling himself I was probably overthinking things, running that loop again and again, trying to justify why 3 weeks of work got called cute. He wasn't overthinking. He was just with someone where what he brought wasn't the right shape for what she needed. And that's not a failure on either side when you reduce it to its actual core. It's just how things are sometimes. You can do everything right and still be the wrong answer for a specific person. That's not a character flaw, it's just math. I look at the ceiling for a bit. The apartment is quiet. Hear Paige shift on the couch and settle again. No drama, no lesson tied with a bow, no version of events where I'm the hero who finally figured himself out. Just a quiet night in my apartment with someone who finds what I bring to the table to be enough. That's all it ever had to be. And honestly, that's not nothing.